Yasser Arafat was a Palestinian political leader, chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization, and president of the Palestinian National Authority. Ideologically an Arab nationalist and a socialist, Arafat was a founding member of the Fatah political party, which he led from 1959 until 2004. His legacy continues to influence Palestinian politics and the broader Middle East peace process. He is remembered as a symbol of resistance and a key player in the struggle for Palestinian self determination. In 1993, Arafat led the PLO to the peace agreement with the Israeli government for the successful negotiations resulting in the 1993 Oslo Accords. Arafat, along with Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres of Israel, were jointly awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1994. Yasir Arafat's full name was Mohammad Abdel Rahman Abdel Rauf Arafat Al Khudwa Al Husseini. He was born in Cairo, Egypt. His father, Abdel Rauf Al Khudwa Al Husseini, was a Palestinian from Gaza City. Arafat's father battled in the Egyptian courts for 25 years to claim family land in Egypt as part of his inheritance, but was unsuccessful. He worked as a textile merchant in Cairo's religiously mixed Sakakini district. Arafat was the second youngest of seven children and was, along with his younger brother Fatih, the only offspring born in Cairo. Jerusalem was the family home of his mother, Zahwa Abul Saud, who died from a kidney ailment in 1933 when Arafat was 4 years of age. Arafat was heavily beaten by his father for going to the Jewish quarter in Cairo and attending religious services. When Arafat was asked why he would not stop going to the Jewish quarter, he responded by saying that he wanted to study Jewish mentality. Arafat had a deteriorating relationship with his father. When he died in 1952, Arafat did not attend the funeral, nor did he visit his father's grave upon his return to Gaza. In 1944, Arafat enrolled in the University of King Fuad I and graduated in 1950. As a student, he embraced Arab nationalist and anti Zionist ideas. At university, he engaged Jews in discussion and read publications by Theodor Herzl and other prominent Zionists. By 1946, he was an Arab nationalist and began procuring weapons to be smuggled into the former British Mandate of Palestine for use by irregulars in the Arab Higher Committee and the Army of the Holy War Militias. During the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, Arafat left the university and, along with other Arabs, sought to enter Palestine to join Arab forces fighting against Israeli troops and the creation of the State of Israel. Opposed to the 1948 creation of the State of Israel, he fought alongside the Muslim Brotherhood during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. He took part in combat in the Gaza area, which was the main battleground of the Egyptian forces during the conflict. In early 1949, the war was winding down in Israel's favor, and Arafat returned to Cairo due to the lack of logistical support. After returning to the university, Arafat studied civil engineering and served as president of the General Union of Palestinian Students from 1952 to 1956. During his first year as president of the union, the university was renamed Cairo University after a coup was carried out by the Free Officers Movement, overthrowing King Farouk I. By that time, Arafat had graduated with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and was called to duty to fight with Egyptian forces during the Suez Crisis. However, he never actually fought. Later that year, at a conference in Prague, he donned a solid white keffiyeh, different from the fishnet patterned one he adopted later in Kuwait, which was to become his emblem. Following the Suez Crisis in 1956, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser agreed to allow the United Nations emergency force to establish itself in the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip, precipitating the expulsion of all guerrilla or Fedayeen forces there, including Arafat. Arafat originally attempted to obtain a visa to Canada and later Saudi Arabia, but was unsuccessful in both attempts. In 1957, he applied for a visa to Kuwait and was approved based on his work in civil engineering. There, he encountered two Palestinian friends, Salah Kahaf, also known as Abu Iyad, and Khalil al Wazir, aka Abu Jihad, both official members of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. Arafat had met Abu Iyad while attending Cairo University and Abu Jihad in Gaza. Both would later become Arafat's top aides. Abu Iyad traveled with Arafat to Kuwait in the 1960s. Abu Jihad, also working as a teacher, had already been living there since 1959. After settling in Kuwait, Abu Iyad helped Arafat obtain a temporary job as a school teacher. As Arafat began to develop friendships with Palestinian refugees, some of whom he knew from his Cairo days, he and the others gradually founded the group that became known as Fatah. In 1959, the group's existence was attested to in the pages of a Palestinian nationalist magazine, Filastununa Nida al Hayat, meaning Our Palestine, the Call of Life, which was written and edited by Abu Jihad. Fatah is a reverse acronym of the Arabic name Harkat al Tahrir al Watani al Filastini, which translates into the Palestinian National Liberation Movement. Fatah is also a word that was used in early Islamic times to refer to conquest. Fatah dedicated itself to the liberation of Palestine by an armed struggle carried out by Palestinians themselves. This differed from other Palestinian political and guerrilla organizations, most of which firmly believed in a united Arab response. Arafat's organization never embraced the ideologies of a major Arab governments of the time, in contrast to other Palestinian factions, which often became satellites of nations such as Iraq, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and others. In accordance with this ideology, Arafat generally used to accept donations from his organization from major Arab governments in order to act independently of them. He did not want to alienate them and sought their undivided support by avoiding ideological alliances. However, to establish the groundwork for Fatah's future financial support, he enlisted contributions from the many wealthy Palestinians working in Kuwait and other Arab states in the Persian Gulf, such as Qatar, where he met Mahmoud Abbas in 1961. These businessmen and oil workers contributed generously to the Fatah organization. Arafat continued this process in other Arab countries such as Libya and Syria. In 1962, Arafat and his closest companions migrated to Syria, a country sharing a border with Israel, which had recently seceded from its union with Egypt. Fatah had approximately 300 members by this time, but none were fighters. In Syria, he managed to recruit members by offering them higher incomes to enable his armed attacks against Israel. Fatah's manpower was incremented further after Arafat decided to offer new recruits much higher salaries than members of the Palestinian Liberation Army, the regular military force of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which was created by the Arab League in 1964. On 31st December, a squad from Al Asifa, Fatah's armed wing, attempted to infiltrate Israel, but they were intercepted and detained by Lebanese security forces. Several other raids with Fatah's poorly trained and badly equipped fighters followed this incident. Some were successful, others failed in their missions. Arafat often led these incursions personally. Arafat was detained in Syria's Mezeh prison when the Palestinian Syrian army officer Yusuf Urabi was killed. Urabi had been chairing a meeting to ease tensions between Arafat and Palestinian Liberation Front leader Ahmad Jibril, But neither Arafat nor Jibril attended, delegating representatives to attend on their behalf. Urabi was killed during or after the meeting amid disputed circumstances. On the orders of Defense Minister Hafez al Assad, who was a close friend of Urabi, Arafat was subsequently arrested, found guilty by a three-man jury, and sentenced to death. However, he and his colleagues were pardoned by President Salah Jadid shortly after the verdict. The incident brought Assad and Arafat to unpleasant terms, which would surface later when Assad became president of Syria. On 13th November 1966, Israel launched a major raid against the Jordanian administered West Bank town of As-Samu in response to a Fatah implemented roadside bomb attack, which had killed three members of the Israeli security forces near the southern Green Line border. In the resulting skirmish, scores of Jordanian security forces were killed and 125 homes razed. This raid was one of several factors that led to the 1967 Six Day War. The Six Day War began when Israel launched airstrikes against Egypt's Air Force on 5th June 1967. The war ended in an Arab defeat and Israel's occupation of several Arab territories, including the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Although Nasser and his Arab allies had been defeated, Arafat and Fatah could claim a victory in that the majority of Palestinians, who had up to that time tended to align and sympathize with individual Arab governments, now began to agree that a Palestinian solution to their dilemma was indispensable. Many Palestinian political parties, including George Habash's Arab nationalist movement, Haj Amin al Husseini's Arab Haya Committee, the Islamic Liberation Front, and several Syrian backed groups virtually crumbled after their sponsor government's defeat. Barely a week after the defeat, Arafat crossed the Jordan River in disguise and entered the West Bank, where he set up recruitment centers in Hebron, the Jerusalem area, and Nablus, and began attracting both fighters and financiers for his cause. At the same time, Nasser contacted Arafat through the former's advisor, Muhammad Hekal, and Arafat was declared by Nasser to be the leader of the Palestinians. In December 1967, Ahmad Shukeri resigned his post as PLO chairman. Yahya Hamouda took his place and invited Arafat to join the organization. Fatah was allocated 33 of 105 seats of the PLO Executive Committee, while 57 seats were left for several other guerrilla factions. Throughout 1968, Fatah and other Palestinian armed groups were the target of a major Israeli army operation in the Jordanian village of Karame, where the Fatah headquarters as well as a mid sized Palestinian refugee camp were located. The town's name is the Arabic word for dignity, which elevated its symbolism in the eyes of the Arab people, especially after the collective Arab defeat in 1967. The operation was in response to attacks, including rocket strikes from Fatah and other Palestinian militias within the Israeli occupied West Bank. According to Saeed Abrouish, the government of Jordan and a number of Fatah commandos informed Arafat that large scale Israeli military preparations for an attack on the town were underway, prompting Fedayeen groups such as George Habash's newly formed Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and Naif Hawatmeh's breakaway organization, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, to withdraw their forces from the town. Though advised by a sympathetic Jordanian army divisional commander to withdraw his men and headquarters to the nearby hills, Arafat refused, stating, "We want to convince the world that there are those in the Arab world who will not withdraw or flee." In response to persistent PLO raids against Israeli civilian targets, Israel attacked the town of Karame, Jordan, the site of a major PLO camp. The goal of the invasion was to destroy Karame camp and capture Yasser Arafat in reprisal for the attacks by the PLO against Israeli civilians, which culminated in an Israeli school bus hitting a mine in the Negev, killing two children. However, plans for the two operations were prepared in 1967, 1 year before the bus attack. The size of the Israeli forces entering Karame made the Jordanians assume that Israel was also planning to occupy the eastern bank of the Jordan River, including the Balkha Governorate, to create a situation similar to the Golan Heights, which Israel had captured just 10 months prior to be used a bargaining chip. Israel assumed the Jordanian army would ignore the invasion, but the latter fought alongside the Palestinians, opening heavy fire that inflicted losses upon the Israeli forces. This engagement marked the first known deployment of suicide bombers by Palestinian forces. The Israelis were repelled at the end of the day's battle, having destroyed most of the Karame camp and taken around 141 PLO prisoners. Both sides declared victory. On a tactical level, the battle went in Israel's favor and the destruction of the Karame camp was achieved. However, the relatively high casualties were a considerable surprise for the Israeli defense forces and was stunning to the Israelis. Although the Palestinians were not victorious on their own, King Hussein let the Palestinians take credit. Some have alleged that Arafat himself was on the battlefield, but the details of his involvement are unclear. However, his allies as well as Israeli intelligence confirm that he urged his men throughout the battle to hold their ground and continue fighting. The battle was covered in detail by Time, and Arafat's face appeared on the cover of the December 13th, 1968 issue, bringing his image to the world for the first time. Amid the post war environment, the profiles of Arafat and Fatah were raised by this important turning point, and he came to be regarded as a national hero who dared to confront Israel. With mass applause from the Arab world, financial donations increased significantly, and Fatah's weaponry and equipment improved. The group's numbers swelled as many young Arabs, including thousands of non Palestinians, joined the ranks of Fatah. When the Palestinian National Council convened in Cairo on 3rd February 1969, Yahya Hamouda stepped down from his chairmanship of the PLO. Arafat was elected chairman on 4th February. He became commander in chief of Palestinian Revolutionary Forces 2 years later, and in 1973 became the head of the PLO's political department. That's all for now. We shall discuss more on the life of Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat in our next episode. Take care until then.